So, Mitch, this is going to be a hangout session where hopefully, as best we can, we reproduce the same thing we'd get if we caught you in the middle of a DNN con and we hung out for a while and we just asked a bunch of questions. I have a small list in front of me of questions that came from the peanut gallery that we all put together. I also have a kind of a run-through that I normally do whenever I'm getting a chance to do a first interview with folks. And if you don't mind, I'll kind of start off with that and run through with some general questions about DNN and history and some things like that that we might not all know. So this plain photo that you have up here, this is your private Cessna then, right?
Now this one's a Mooney, but yes, this is my thing. But
yeah,
if you see me flying around somewhere now, that's what I'm in. So
that is awesome. Well, when the weather's nice, we can't wait to have you down here. It gives you an excuse for a good short trip, right?
Any excuse to go flying, I'll take it. Works for me.
That is exciting. Well, first up question, Mitch, just to get the ball rolling, that I put out every time is pirates or ninjas?
Ninjas.
Ninjas. Thank you. Thank you very much. Charles, that's for you there. All right. You know, one of the things I was always asking when I start off talking with people is just to talk a little bit about you know, kind of their history, where they got started with .NET Nuke, when they first heard about it or when they got first interested in it, and you know, what that looked like or felt like at the time. So, Mitch, it's been a long time, but what was your first introduction?
For me, it was all the way back in 2006, I believe, maybe even a little bit earlier than that. I can't remember actually for the exact start, but what happened was I actually got forced into it. Working with Wells Fargo, I was taking over a project that was built in DNN. Nobody knew what it was. I was hired as a developer to figure it out and make it work, and kind of snowballed from there, really. Seeing what I was able to do, what I was able to accomplish with that project kind of led to one thing after another. Next thing you know, I'm speaking at the long ago DNN DNN Connections event, which was, you know, alongside the ASP.NET Connections, Dev Connections stuff, and I don't know, it's just been a project I've been, you know, involved with now for way too long, I think, in some ways. But it's amazing seeing where it started. You know, I came in at the 3X days. Actually, just
that's what I was going to ask. Was that 2 or 3?
3.3.4 was the first version that I started working with, but I do have the joy of working with the client right now that is on 2.0. We won't go into that.
Do they just get a free brand new website just for the notoriety of having a 2 currently?
I would love to do so. Scorched Earth with it would be fantastic. All of my employees would love it. But unfortunately, right now we are just supporting their 2.0 installs. We've came a long way. All right.
So how many folks with you on your side, and everybody's underneath of Iowa Computer Gurus, or how's that structured for you?
We vary. Sometimes it's independent consultants and things as well, but the given team at any point in time is anywhere between 11 and 20 people. So.
Wow. I did not realize.
It just depends on what's going on.
Now, forgive me, I think I caught back at SoFri, but then I had it wrong at one point. Is it that your brother works with you or your son works with you? I don't.
My little brother's been working with me for a couple years now. He's learning more and more about all of the craziness that manages to wander through my door. So definitely he's one of the more entertaining ones to work with.
All right. So
especially he gets played when trying to travel again. I don't think I'll get him to go anywhere if that happens again.
That was pretty bad. Yeah, that's part of why I remember the story. So you you start off then as a one-man shop, and you've built and you've come from there with a lot of more structure to it now. What's what remains your focus? What remains the main thing that you do? Are you, chief cook and bottle washer? Do you focus in on one specific kind of thing, and that's what you do, and everyone else is handed off to? What's your structure?
The structure, and one of the reasons why we'll kind of remain, my business will remain the size that it probably is right now for a while, is I still oversee everything before it gets back to the client. One of the biggest things for me is making sure that it meets the standards that I've set forth in every project that I've done. So depending on the nature of the project, sometimes that's just a last-minute review of what's going out the door, especially if it's design-related. In other cases, it's a more involved review in architecture along the way. Really, truly depends on exactly what's happening along the way. For me, it's definitely a lot more around the architecture sides of things, a lot of performance optimization, a lot of training as it relates to performance optimization as well has become some of the day-to-day stuff that I've been working with.
Training within your group or training with the clients?
External training. In most cases, it's helping other organizations figure out how they should be performance testing their applications. Once they've done a performance test, how do they analyze those results? What steps are necessary to actually fix things? Step one is knowing you have a problem, but step two is being able to figure it out how to fix it.
We're gonna bookmark that because I'm gonna come back to it in a minute with some of the questions that Clint and David kind of chimed in on that we're gonna ask you here tonight.
Alrighty.
So back to that early days of DNN 3.2, 3.4, something like that. Obviously, you were experienced and established with other things at that point in time. Do you have a background? Have you spent any time in other management systems? Drupal, Joomla, Umbraco. You dirty your hands in other systems from time to time?
Enough to be dangerous in a few. A little bit with WordPress and Drupal. Some with Sitecore. I've touched a lot of different things over the years for various things, e-commerce-wise. Done a little bit with the Internet storefront, Magento, a couple crazy ones that I still don't remember their names, but if I ever spot them again, I'll run. So a little bit of everything. A lot of it depends on just what the client's opportunity brings. I will end up diving into something because a client says, hey, I need help with this. Yeah, sure, why not? And then we'll go figure it out. I'm doing some client work right now with Arduino and some embedded development. So, a little bit of everything.
That's fun. You're going to make something physical. That's excellent.
And what's even better is it communicates back to a DNN site to do some data retention in the end. So, it goes full circle.
I smell the beginnings of a DNN Con presentation from that in the future, right?
No, there's I have all kinds of ideas for those, yeah.
All right. Well, sometimes I ask skin makers and module developers and folks if they've only focused in on DNN or if they have experience in other systems, if they have something that that comes to mind in a snap kind of thought of, I love the way this other system does something. I wish DNN also did X, Y, Z. You have anything like that comes to mind real quick?
I wish skinning was easier, is the biggest thing for me right now. There's a bunch of other things, that could probably go off one way or another, but I do think that the level of entry for skinning is still a little high. Otherwise, the other areas for me, it's much more of a common problem. The text editor, that's probably the worst thing to train people on, but every platform's text editor has the same type of problems. Some may be a little bit easier to train around than others, but in the end, it's still a rich text editor. And so that's the biggest thing for me. And the best part is I'm not a designer, so I don't know how to fix it.
It's the one thing you can pass off because you can say, not my plate?
Pretty much, because every time I try to mess with something, my designers yell at me. So I try not to.
Excellent. Well, kind of segueing off of that, talking about DNN in the past versus DNN now, what's been something that you've found frustrating in the past that, maybe you've seen change or change shape or change direction recently that you're excited about?
Definitely some of the new requests coming in, some of the pull requests coming in from the community have definitely added some long-standing needed features, things such as portal-specific SMTP settings. That would be probably one of the big ones that comes to mind.
Yep, sure.
Default configuration is actually better configured for performance now. That also helps. Dangerous settings have been removed.
My understanding of the default configuration is it was exactly line by line all the things you said should have been that way for...
No, they're not quite there yet, but we're getting closer. Each one that gets changed is being changed to the recommendations I have. It's just, we're not all there yet.
All right, you got a tally somewhere that you can know the three that are left.
Yeah, I think it's 4 or 5 left. There's still a handful of just a couple quick checks and you're set to go, but it's getting there.
All right, good deal, good deal. So how about stuff that's on the roadmap for DNN 7.5, DNN 8? We had Joe talking with us last month and kind of running through some things with us before it was officially announced or could be released. And it was an enjoyable conversation. It kind of filled us in on a few more bullet points versus what we saw in the fall last year at DNNCon Palm Beach. You excited about what's up ahead? Anything in the roadmap got you thinking about how much fun that's going to be?
Well, I think there's definitely some very positive things happening. Some of the decoupling that's going on, breaking some of the admin modules out into distinct organizational pieces, some things of that nature I think is going to be fantastic for those of us that want to be able to maybe build our own user management module and handle things differently, or those of us that want to do some of these other things and make them a little bit easier to manage. For me, the big question with everything going forward, I think, is the question that everybody has, MVC versus web forms.
Yep.
The religious political debate that everyone will fight to the death until they don't change their mind. I'm going to be I'm excited to see how that all comes together more than anything. I don't think there's not enough information at this point in time to say it's going to go this way or it's going to go that way. I think it's much more a matter of something to watch. And, the one thing I can't stress enough, as part of a couple of the working groups and stuff that are going on is, community input and community feedback, and that is huge. Get involved, say something, share your opinions, because it's going to be a much more community-focused endeavor as we go into 7.5, as we go into 8, or whatever the next, as it's kind of looking right now. That is going to be shaped a lot by that community involvement. So getting involved and becoming a part of it. For those of you like me that are stubborn, actually learning Git so you can do pull requests, it's just one of those things you need to, spend some time and be able to get it in and help make things. The other thing is that for those that are developing modules, start your upgrades now. Get yourself closer and closer to current version. One of the things that I'm working on right now for the book is a chapter basically on best practices and guidance for future-proofing. If you're using that old way that still works, to maybe grab a user, but you're using deprecated methods all over the place, update that code. Use the more modern ways, because some of that stuff's going to finally go away. At least we hope. Yeah. So, I think it's exciting times. There's just a lot of change that's going to happen as part of it.
Mm-hmm. Talking with just internal, my crew and my folks, having remembered what happened around the DNN 4 versus 5 time period, I I kind of imagine that with some modules and module providers, it's going to be a kind of clearing of the playing field again, and we're going to see people rush forward with new things and new updated solutions, or they might just go away. So I'm interested to see some of the shakeup that's going to occur. It doesn't have to be bad. It'll be exciting.
Yep, I think it'll be a place where some of those vendors, you know, the good vendors and bad vendors, so we all have our lists. Some of us don't share, but those that are good and bad, we may see some change as that goes, because depending on which way it goes, it may be a fairly, you know, involved change for a developer to move forward onto that version.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I think again, it's one of those ones where it's still too early. We don't know enough to be able to say this is what's going to happen or that's what's going to happen. It's just a matter of waiting and kind of playing it out, staying aware. If you're a module vendor and you're targeting the commercial audience, you definitely need to be one of the ones paying really close attention to what's going on day to day as things progress.
So if you could have anything go exactly the way that you want it to go your way, what would you name it and make it be so right now?
For me, I want a performance review of everything. I don't, MVC versus web forms and everything else, don't get me wrong. Sure, it's something we need to decide and it needs to be dealt with later. But there's some cleaning that still needs to be happening performance-wise. You know, yes, it's my high horse, and I will talk about it anytime I want, but like it or not, website performance is part of your Google rankings now. So making sure that the platform in the next releases is as fast as possible, I think it needs to be one of the #1 priorities. And an evaluation criteria for whatever solution comes for MVC support, etc., along the way.
Would you like to see something more from module developers that are accepted into the store system, and see some type of, just like we have in Azure, at least seal of approval or rating, have something that's more performance related on, I don't know, 4 or 5 key benchmark related measurements, and then measure the modules as they get released onto the store, so that there's a little bit more responsibility displayed there?
I'm going to go with maybe. I think there are certain criteria that you can definitely do as a minimum threshold in terms of improving that quality, but I think there's just a certain level. You know, it kind of goes to the blog series that I started a while back, and some of the things that I've talked about over the years is it's not necessarily whether or not the store says this module is good, right? One of the things you get anytime you introduce that kind of gateway is, well, now, oh no, I've identified something major with my module that I need to fix, but now it's got to go through this approval and certification process, right? It's going to complicate everything. So sure. I don't necessarily think that's huge, but what I do think is I think that we need a way for developers to be able to attest or some sort of verify that they work in the large scenarios. You know, one of the biggest things that I see is anytime you push DNN one way or another, whether it be large number of pages, large number of users, large number of pages and users, or throw a huge amount of load to it, various modules will fail at various points in time. And right. So I think there is definitely some areas where I don't necessarily think it needs to be a governance coming down from, you know, DNN Corporation or the store or anything else. I really think it's just that we need to continue getting and working with all of the module vendors in the ecosystem to really showcase to them that we care about stability, performance, and integration. You know, I challenge all of my developers for the very few things that we do commercially, as well as anybody that I work with, that don't look at it as, hey, it works on my test site. look at it as, will it work if you have 1 million users? Will it work if you have 1 million tabs? Will it work if you are running things together? It all comes down to development best practices. You know, we had a prime example of one of those last week where in a heavy 6 web server load balanced environment, we had one module single-handedly bring down the farm with less than 1,000 users actively hitting the site. All because that module vendor did not believe in appropriately handling database connections. You're not going to catch that in a review through the store. You're only going to catch that by being able to trust the developer of the modules you're working with. So could it be a benefit? Yes. Do I really think that that needs to be a #1 priority for the store or anyone else? No, not necessarily, because I don't think it'll get what people think it will get quality-wise. And I think the Apple Store is a prime example of it. They have a review process, but does it stop horrible apps from getting out to the iPhone? No.
Right, and it creates a bottleneck that is a very, very well-known bottleneck of getting things pushed out.
Yep. And it also increases costs to the developers, usually.
Yeah.
At least initially, because somebody has to pay for that time to review. You know, we do have the extension verification service that's out there that people could use that helps identify certain levels of compatibility as well. There's nothing saying you can't test a third-party module against it either for clean install, clean uninstall, Azure support, etc.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, so for a segue into some of the questions that came in from folks, a couple of the guys were saying that you know, from different sessions that you've been giving, you talk about you know, doing high-end load tests and doing performance checks on a site, but kind of the variation on the question that came in was when you encounter a new site, when you inherit something new that you've not touched before, it's not your site, you just heard somebody put it together, you ran across it just to look at it in a browser, what are some of the first things that you do to evaluate a site and to check for? Maybe some first high-level gotchas or things that you look at, or maybe tools that you use to help you evaluate and decide how is this site, before you even think about doing a performance review on it, maybe some of your first introductions on what you do when you get something new.
So biggest thing, if I get a host account, one of the first things I do is I just run through, against what I do know as best settings, run through host settings real quick. What's the performance setting set to? Where are they hosted is also the #1 question. Knowing where they're hosted usually prompts another bunch of questions. Certain vendors impose certain problems. There are definitely hosting companies that the problem is not the site, it's the hosting company. So there's definitely, that's one of the first things. The next thing I do is I go and look at basic system health. What's the size of the database? Does the size of the database make sense for the site? In a site, especially if I've inherited something with problems, it's the first thing I check. Because usually what will happen is you have a site that has 15 pages and their database is 700 meg or, you know, a couple gigs.
Yeah.
I encountered one earlier this year that had 6 pages of content, and the database was around 11 or 12 gigabytes inside. Made it pretty easy to figure out what was going wrong. Little bit of sampling to figure out what database table was growing. So
okay.
Delete things, everybody else is good.
I was going to say back were just appending, or was it that the search table was enormous, or what?
That one was actually the spam registration bot. Had created 1.97 million users. So delete everything with a user ID greater than 2, and then life was good.
Wow.
Every situation's a little bit different, but it gives you that starting point of assessing the health of a site. If you go in and see a site that has a database that's never been backed up, that should raise a few red flags. If you go in and see a site that has a database that's abnormally large, you want to look for that. It's most of the basic things are just kind of trying to get an idea of what's out there. The other thing that I do is I look for problem modules in the installed modules list. If there's modules that I know that cause problems and they're in use or they're heavily in use, that's one of the first areas that I'll typically start.
I know you've been very careful, and when you speak about different modules and module vendors, you're always very respectful. You take a point to mention that you don't hate any modules, that you want to help encourage people to make things better, and if they contact you, you love giving out tips to help somebody make their product better. You mentioned skins and having some of the skin vendors instantly make things improvements for you when you suggested them to you. So I know you're always very respectful of that, but not baiting you in the question in any way, but is there a module that you see it and you say, you know what, every time I will uninstall this module, there is no good case for this module? There are a few. In the interest of here's my, and you kind of hit the nail on the head. I find a performance issue with a module, I reach out to the vendor. I do the same thing with module vendors that I do with the core and DNN. When I find a problem, I document it, I fix it for the client so that they can get along if it's something fixable. Some cases, it involves gutting that module and throwing it away and never using it again. There are a few vendors out there that is the only solution for their product. I am not in the business of naming names as much as there would be a certain bit of joy and benefit in doing so. But that's not the appropriate thing to do. What I will say is that I encourage people to reach out to these vendors. If these vendors aren't being responsive, then that's where you decide that your selection of a module vendor, right, is selecting a partner, right? Whether you want to look at it that way or not, you're partnering with the vendor. If you contact a vendor and bring up a performance issue that has been 100% traced back to that module vendor, if they don't care and they don't want to fix it, maybe you don't want to partner with that vendor. And that's the way that I take it. Now, what I will say, the general rule of thumb that I will give people, modules that are in that Swiss Army knife category of modules, i.e. the modules that can do everything, buyer beware, right? Because if something can do everything, but it can't do everything well, is something to be aware of. And that goes for form modules, it goes for the dynamic actionability modules, build your own modules, and things of that nature, right? There's a certain point where you just may have exceeded what that module should even reasonably be able to do. So there is definitely a dividing line as well between a problem with the module that the module vendor needs to fix and a person trying to do something with the website with a module that costs $49 that really truly requires 100 hours of custom development to do it the right way. So there is a little bit of a give and take. Sorry, I didn't.
I'm not gonna. There is a list, but I won't share it.
And I think you're the gentleman of DNN speakers for always insisting on that. No harm there. I think that's excellent. So that was kind of that first question on, what do you do when you first encounter a new site? How do you review it, and what do you do when you're looking at it? David asked a question early on, and I'll pose that one to you now about a little bit about how you took your company when you made that decision that you were going to focus on DNN as a core item, and that was going to be, whether it chose you or you chose it, that was going to be your main item, and that you were going to actively be a speaker and present and put out information out there. A little bit about how that shaped your business and vice versa, how you then shaped other things.
Yeah, DNN always has been a large portion of what we do. Funnily enough, it's always been between 50 and 70% of our business. We still do a lot of other things. especially in the last couple of years, we've got a lot of WPF as well as regular ASP.NET MVC stuff that we've been working on. Where DNN came into play was it solved a specific client need. It gave us an ability to deliver something to a client at a much lower price point than what we'd be able to build them something custom. By leveraging DNN for the things that we can use out of the box, content management features, user account security roles, etc., right? We're able to give them in a custom solution something that has a very high dollar amount with a simple installation of a platform. So we're able to maybe build out that one piece of custom functionality that they need that maybe is really involved. But then we give them all of the added bonuses of, you know what, they want to add a blog later on, they can go out and download the module of their choice to use as a blog. And voila, what we built for them has been able to be extended for a fairly reasonable price. So that's where, you know, DNN really made a lot of sense from a business perspective. In terms of getting involved in speaking, especially early on, it really became, you know, I learned DNN and taught DNN to the rest of my team 100% from the School of Hard Knocks. Documentation right now, at this point in time, people still complain that there isn't much, which is still a fairly valid statement. But it may be very hard to believe, but back in 2007, 2008, etc., what we have right now looks like the holy grail of amazing documentation where every single thing is out there.
Right.
So it kind of got started that way. I was doing some talks with local user groups and other things. Also, I was teaching at the college level at that point as well, and it just kind of naturally went with sharing information, getting out to meet other people, going to the events.
Are you still doing that? Do you still teach in either college or in classes like that?
I recently stopped at the college level, did it for a little over 8 years, and I think we're at the second semester now that I haven't been teaching. So it was a long, I think a total of probably 25 or so college classes that I had taught. Just not something that fits into the schedule and planning and needs right now. So doing a lot more client teaching, which has been taking me on site with clients. That conflicted a little bit with being able to, you know, be around every week to teach.
But so for the you know, the idea of going and speaking at our DNN conventions and things, I don't know, have you been out to a DNN Connect yet?
I have not been over to the Europe event yet. I am trying to go this year. We will see. Airfare is getting ridiculous. I am sponsoring. I'm a sponsor of that event. I am doing everything in my power to find my way across the pond, but we'll see where it goes. Okay,
all right. But so for you know, for speaking at events and heading out to those, you're I would say within the community you're known for that. It would be at the loss for the event to not have you on the board, you know, telling us some exciting things. You enjoy and get a lot out of these teaching events, whether you're talking about college or you're talking about short teaching and short sessions where you're presenting. I know we get a lot out of it. You also enjoy that back and forth and teaching?
Yeah, it's you know, it's a fantastic thing. You know, the biggest thing is with anything is it's balancing dollar spend. You know, last year I spent a lot more on traveling to events than I had ever imagined that I would. You know, because that all comes out of my pocket.
Right.
And that's where DNN Connect, that's the main reason why it's on the fence this year, is just, you know, a trip to Europe, no matter how you do it, is $5,000 to $7,000. You know, by the time you count in your hotels and all of your other expenses with airfare, You know, it's going to be a great event, and I enjoy them, the social aspect of it, you know, especially things like G&M Con. Sure, the event is fantastic, but the after events are just as much of a part of the event as the sessions themselves. That's where, you know, you collaborate, you learn and share some of the war stories between things. You find out that your client has shopped around to 5 other vendors. You learn a lot in those in the after events, and it's definitely rewarding. And for me, it's maybe not necessarily the day of the event. It's not necessarily, you know, even the thank yous after the sessions or the session feedback. It's those emails you get 6 months later, a year later, when somebody says, look what we launched, or look what we were able to do, that not only was the session beneficial that day, but in practice it worked. In practice, I helped lead them down a path that resulted in them, you know, resolving the issue that they may have had, or something like that. That's where the real benefit and where the real value for me in terms of doing that comes into play.
Clint asks on the chats internal, how badly do you want to see another event in Charlotte? We've talked about it. We're not on the fence. We're just knowing that it's a lot to organize for this year, so we'll do it soon. But whoo,
just get it done. I mean, I'll be perfectly honest. I'm tired of going to Florida. So, somebody do another event.
Yeah, it's a matter of getting it worked in between everybody else who's already kind of, you know, throwing their name in the ring or their hat in the ring. So it'll happen. Not this year, maybe not next, but soon enough.
Yeah,
we will. So Fry. I want to see somebody on the West Coast. I want an excuse to head out to Vegas or San Francisco or something like that, and we just need to have somebody out there pick it up.
Yeah, I was going to say, I would love to see us, you know, I kind of like the idea that we had there for a while, right? We had Chicago, we had Southern Fried, we had down in Florida. It was kind of nice because you get the people, especially with Code Camp style events like that, right? Your weekend events. You are going to have some people that will travel a long distance to get there, but you're also going to get a lot of the locals or semi-locals or the crazy ones like Clint that I believe drive from North Carolina to Florida.
Yeah, we did.
You know, you get a different audience wherever you go. I think that we definitely had a different audience as, you know, when we had the last Southern Fried event. It's nice for a little change here and there to get other people involved, especially the West Coast people. I don't know why, but they don't, like, we don't have as much over there. I would love to see an event that way too.
Well, we'll all keep our ears peeled and try and get some other people to pony up, but we'll be on the list here soon and shortly. All right. Well, I think one of the last questions I had in from the group was kind of an advice or a suggestion question, and this is for you, Mitch, but I think any of us also have some examples of things like this. Grant was saying that you know, he's got a situation where he needs to have an event triggered or kicked off when new users are created. And he was asking, what's your favorite way to go about doing that? You know, perhaps he's talking about database-related actions. Perhaps he's not. I'm not quite sure. If Grant's on, maybe you want to post some other parts of that question. But favorite approaches there, Mitch?
There's no good approach, unfortunately, unless you want to rewrite your own registration module. And even then, you don't capture everything. The safest approach overall requires a certain level of management, in my experience, and that is, unfortunately, using a database trigger on the users table. It works every time, and it allows you to do whatever you need to do at that point. One of the things that is important with that, though, is do not upgrade DNN with the trigger in place. Take the trigger out, your upgrade, put the trigger back in. I have a client that, you know, I don't typically do any solutions for a client with a trigger unless they truly understand what's going to happen. And I had one that we documented a lot, and they didn't remember that piece of documentation, so then their upgrade failed. We had to go back and do a little bit of cleanup. You know, it doesn't always get in the way, but sometimes it does. If you want to hook on to events such as user creation, role creation, trying to think of a couple of the other ones that I've had to deal with a lot. Usually it's user creation and role creation are the two biggest ones where people want to do something. That ends up being the fastest and quickest way to implement it without having to rewrite a whole bunch of areas. If you then need to do something in code with that, take that user when they get inserted, drop them into a database table that's, you know, users to process or something like that, and then have a scheduled job in DNN that catches it and takes care of whatever action you may need to take.
Kicks off subsequent actions after the fact, maybe.
Yep, something like that. It's, you know, if it's just in the database, your trigger, you can do whatever you need to do at that point. After triggers work fairly well. You know, if you have a really complex situation, though, there's nothing wrong with creating your own custom registration module. You can also use third-party modules that allow you to kick off custom SQL actions. But then that's where you're getting into using, you know, whatever vendor's module you're wanting to work with, and that may or may not work stylistically with what you're trying to accomplish. So depends on the situation, but either third-party custom or the easy way with a database trigger.
That pretty well covers all the potential paths there. So it's if you're gonna be managing it and you know you've got a range of stuff, with caution you would probably approach putting a trigger on the database and then maybe having a way station table that you catch and you process afterwards. Or maybe you'd build a custom reg module, or next after that you might consider carefully reviewing registration modules that can allow you to kick off subsequent processes.
You got it.
All right. Grant says, thanks, Mitch. I had another question come in saying with, you know, talking about module development and doing custom things that you do have a few different things. I know you're not, you know, producing a volume of marketable products on the store, so it's not like some vendors where we have them come on and it's I don't want to say a pitch session, but, you know, we're going through a series of different modules. You know, you do produce some things, though, that are utilities and that are useful items that you found out of your own needs with clients. But I think the technical question regarding that was, with your module development, what percentage of those are you doing with Web API versus older methods?
Our usage of Web API is still a little bit limited. There's a couple reasons for it. One, DNN is using an older version of Web API. My team is much more familiar with the newer versions of Web API that doesn't directly translate. I personally also see that most of the people that are leveraging it are doing custom things. If you look at the blog module, for example, which is one of the probably the most common open source modules that I know of that's using Web API, had to write its own custom authentication process because it wasn't utilizing the DNN way of doing it. It's just an area for us that with what we're doing in West is really highly specialized. We haven't done a lot with the DNN Web API implementation. I think there's going to be some change in it. Whether that happens in 7.4, there's some stuff with some of my involvement in the testing of Evoke 8 and DNN 7.4.0 that have identified some potential performance bottlenecks, et cetera, with Web API and the current implementation as well. I don't know enough about it yet to say one way or another. So the percentage-wise, very low, but it's becoming something that we're needing that solution to be there and working with it going forward as we move to more single-page application style MVC-ish,
yeah,
whatever you want to call it, ways of doing things.
Yeah. You know, I've kind of run through series of questions. Mitch, you had anything unscripted or things you were thinking about that you wanted to share with us? Either things you're into and have been up to lately, anything you're working on, or you want to share your screen and show us any, I don't know, upcoming projects or things you're especially proud of that you want to show off?
You know, the biggest thing for me right now is responsive design in DNN is huge right now. For those of you doing module development, working with things, you know, one of the things that we're working on whenever I have a spare moment, which apparently is not very often recently, since I decide to randomly agree to write 3 chapters of a book in 3 weeks. You know, it's one of those things where Bootstrap is becoming huge, and it makes. I was going to ask you
if you Bootstrap or if you had some different flavor that you appreciated.
Right now, I'm finding that Bootstrap works really well. The biggest thing with Bootstrap is it gives the end users customization and freedom to do a lot of things on their own fairly quickly. One of the things that we are working on and will be out there at some point are some simple modules for managing tabs and accordions. You know, I find that people want to do that all the time, and they need them to be responsive. And you know what, with Bootstrap, if you have a Bootstrap skin, you can throw tabs into a Bootstrap skin anytime, anywhere, any place by simply having the right HTML markup. Problem is, you really don't want your average content editor doing that inside of the DNN text editor. It doesn't usually end well. So we're working on a couple very simple modules that for sites that are running Bootstrap skins, it's a module that drops in and allows you to manage tabs and manage accordions specifically, are the 2 that we're starting out with, within a Bootstrap skin, and it'll just take on the look and feel of everything else with your skin.
And are you imagining that this is going to be specifically a tab or accordion-related module, or is this more like a Bootstrap HTML editor, and it's going to be something that allows you to put in anything, and it happens to be Bootstrap friendly?
We're working on exactly how that's going to come together. Initial idea was to basically throw it out as 2 different modules. The other more prevailing idea right now is tabs and accordion have the same setup, right? They have a title and they have content. So what we're really looking at now is probably doing it as one, it managed content items, and then you choose whether you want it rendered as tabs or accordion is what we're looking at now. It's just one of those things where it's at the like 60% mark, and if I can get an afternoon where I'm not working on testing a website to 500,000 concurrent users or some other craziness like has happened in the last couple of days, we'll get it done and get it out there. But that's the biggest thing for me that's kind of out of the ordinary. You know, I'm working on a number of pull requests right now for some performance improvements against the core, and covered a lot of things with a bit of an audit that I did about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. So hoping to get a bunch of those things in to get incorporated into most likely going to be 7.5.0. Other than that, it's just lots of client activity. Like you said in the very beginning here, lots of stuff going on, lots of people asking for lots of things, and everybody wants it yesterday.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. So, folks, how about everybody online attending? We got 5 of us here on screen. We've got a total of 9 or 10 of us that have been in and out recently in the last 30 minutes or so. Anybody else have any new questions that you want to pass to Mitch while we still have him for a few more minutes? This is his slowest part of the day. He's gonna get off and he's gonna go put out 4 more fires as soon as he's off the webcam. So we want his attention that he can think about something. This is time to ask.
If he's got a few minutes, I think he needs to go work on. If he's got a few minutes, I think he needs to go and work on the tabs and accordion module there. I mean,
actually, what I had to do right now is I have to finish that module that I'm working on for that client. I should really clean up the office here too. It's a pigsty. But no, actually, I got to get the book written, or I'm going to have a tech editor really mad at me here soon. So that's where my spare time is in the last few weeks.
Clint passes on a question from the crew. Says, any new recent modules that you've seen appear on the scene that you really like, that you want to give a nod to, or share with anyone else to take a look at?
You know, I hate plugging certain vendors, but you know what? I have to actually give. The guys at DNN Sharp have been doing a lot of good things, and they're one of the modules out there that I find that play well with Bootstrap design.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily agree with everything that they have out there and all of their ideas on some things, but I will say that those have been the modules that have given me the least amount of problems in recent days. And Search Boost, I don't use DNN Search anymore. I use Search Boost.
All right, that's a good one.
It's the only thing I've been able to integrate for a client. Hopefully the site will be going live soon, but we integrated an entirely custom document management module where we extract the contents of any uploaded PDF, Excel file, Word document, you name it. We're reading it, dumping it to an index table, and Search Boost is allowing us to integrate that and display it in a fully responsive layout. Works slick and took me less than 25 minutes to set up on the Search Boost stuff.
How you're parsing that data, are you using SQL to do the heavy lifting and parse for you, or are you using a .NET process to parse?
Using a third-party component to lift the data out of the files. And basically, they upload the file. I keep a copy locally for a little bit, push the document itself to Amazon so that we can not use a bunch of space on the server. And basically, I got a DNN scheduled job that runs through all of those temporary copies, yanks out the content, drops just the content into the database. So, for example, a 25 megabyte PDF comes out to be less than a megabyte in the database, more like 300 or 400K. And that content's there, and then Search Boost builds its index off of that, deep links into our custom module, still implementing security. The really cool part about it is it allows that client the ability to have anybody search the entire directory, but then implement a paywall at download. Because Search Boost searches everything, displays the results, they click the link to download, the custom module is smart enough to say, hey, you don't have rights to do this, but you know what? If you buy a membership, we'll take you right back as soon as you pay. So
nice.
that's been one of the ones that it's been kind of fun, and if I had any module vendors that have made my life easier in the last few months, it would definitely be them.
We caught up with them at the, not this DNNCon, but the one before when they were kind of promoting or releasing, and we promised to have them on. So I will put them on the list to go nag. We'll have them on to speak soon. Charles, for instance, chimed in and asked if you knew how Search Boost works with hotcakes or works with hotcakes data. Have you done anything much with hotcakes?
I have not done much with hotcakes for a few reasons, but just haven't had a chance yet. I believe that there is some sort of a hook that he has into hotcakes, but I'm not 100% sure in terms of searching. I do know that most modules that work into the DNN search work into Search Boost without a problem. So sites I've been working on use like news articles and a bunch of other things, and it pretty much works without any change from what you would expect with a regular DNN search.
Well, we will have to get them in to tell us a little bit, because that's a good reminder there.
Okay, well, in terms of if it doesn't work with DNN search, then you're probably out of luck unless there's a custom solution already in place. But what I can encourage you to do, just like I do with any other module vendors, and especially with DNN Sharp, if you want it, send them an email. Request support for them, because they are pretty responsive to, hey, I really want it to be able to do this. Or creative in telling you ways to get around a problem as well. So.
All right. Well, folks, we're coming to the end of our time here. This point in time would be the point where if we were meeting all in person, we'd start wrapping up and saying how we're going to go to the local watering hole around the corner and have drinks and sit down for supper snacks with everyone. I've got nothing here, so I raised the glass. I think just specifically here. Hey, wait. So if you're going to raise glasses, it's got to be DNN swag glasses. This is "So I'm Awesome" from Applied Eye from DNN Con here this last time. Or my original there. That's my mug from Clint a few summers back, right?
Hey, Mitch.
Yeah.
What about REST APIs? Can Search Boost talk to those or anything like that?
I don't know. So you're wanting it to go out and actually go after a REST API to grab searchable content, or do you want to be able to search from a REST?
To grab searchable content, because Hotcakes has a REST API and everything like that we can communicate with. So I was thinking maybe you could, I don't know.
Yeah,
that,
you probably.
But
I don't think there. I mean, you could probably through some sort of automation go after it. I'm not 100% sure though. That would definitely be an interesting one to look at.
Okay. Was Dustin about to say something?
Someone said, "Who's got the dog?" because they heard Yuki barking in the background, and Dustin paused and said, "Yep, that's the dog." Unless anybody else has any other parting questions, I'll kind of give a second there to see if any pop up in chat or see anything. I know where
was barking. Somebody came, so back in there.
Yeah, no worries, D. Mitch, it's been thoroughly enjoyable to have you hang out with us here for an hour and some change. You know, you're always great to catch up with when we're at cons and conventions and connecting and hanging out in after-hours events, and today was fun in the same light, and so I really appreciate you spending some time with us.
Yeah, definitely. And if anybody ever has any questions or anything too, I don't hide, so you know, definitely more than willing to share anything. I mean, that's what DNN's all about, is the group and sharing information, and it's usually mutually beneficial. So by all means, if there's ever something I can do to help you, just let me know.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. Everybody give Mitch a round of applause. Thanks for spending some time here with us. And go have a good, profitable night. If you feel like writing on the book, tell them that we let you go and you could write. If you don't feel like it, tell them that we kept you all night long and that you got to blame QCDUG for the day and delay in your book writing.
Sounds like a good idea. Actually, I'll explain. It'll work better.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody. Have a good night. Just to wrap up as we're all leaving here, next QCDUG meeting or SoFri meeting, I'll get in the habit of calling it that as soon enough. We're going to have Beth Fireball from the DNN store sitting in to speak with us and talk about a little bit of information and similar session to this, Q&A on all kinds of things we've ever wanted to ask and talk with her about with the DNN store. I've got a stack of questions. If you've got any things you've ever wanted to ask, either about module developers or stats on sales or how they list stuff in their search, pull those questions together and send them to me and David, and we'll run through them in next month's session. All right. Well, thanks, everybody. Have a good night, and we'll see you next time.